So, hi everyone. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Nice to see you all. We haven't just been spending 1 hour chatting. So I'm really excited about today's talk. As you know, this is part of the creative programming for Dubai Design Week. And the talk we're gonna kind of explore today is around crisis as an organizing agent. And of course, the year 2020 has had a notorious reputation with a concentration of global crises that are disrupting the lives of millions, including our own, and impacting economies and industries around the world. So today, what I hope we'll explore is kind of the emergence of some of the responses to these crises. And I know that all of you have some incredible experience and insight into this. And we will also look into how collectives and communities are coming together to try and solve some of these cascading and collapsing systems around us. So before we start, maybe we can go around and introduce ourselves, maybe where you're tuning in from, a quick background, and one good habit that you've picked up lately. So we'll go around and do that. I can start. So my name is Leen Sadder. I am the Creative Hub lead at ATÖLYE Dubai. My background is in design, entrepreneurship, community building, and I am based in Dubai at the moment. And one good habit that I picked up probably during quarantine was meditating in the morning. But I can't say that I've been doing it regularly. So maybe I'll pass it on to Joan.
Yeah, so we keep it very straightforward, no long bios or anything. Just so my name is Joan Baz. I'm a graphic designer specialized in illustration and animation. So basically I studied graphic design and then did my master's in animation in France, and then returned to Beirut in 2012 and co-founded a collective called Wera. And soon after, in 2015, I left them and founded my own design studio called Cardamom House, specialized also in illustration and animation. And then after, for 5 years, taught in LAU and AUB. And then most recently picked up Beirut Animation Festival, which we'll be discussing today more in details. So a good habit I picked up recently, I guess, starting my day with a warm water and a squeeze of lemon before I do anything. So I guess I heard that that's good for your
nice
metabolism. Yeah.
Great. And where are you calling us from today?
I'm in Paris now. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
John.
you.
Welcome. Emre, do you want to go next?
Of course. Thank you, Leen. So this is Emre. I'm calling from Istanbul, Turkey. I'm working right now as programming lead for events and programs at ATÖLYE in Istanbul. My background is actually quite diverse. I'm coming from the cultural management and programming background, but with a wide knowledge of communications and marketing. For the past 5 years, I'm mostly focused on cultural participation, programming, and community building and community management. And actually, the habits that I have in this past, let's say, 7-8 months is walking. Every day after work, I go out and walk around 1 hour because it helps me to leave all the work at home and think about
literally leave the work at home.
There, yeah.
Nice. Amazing. Thank you. And last but not least, Ibrahim.
Hi, so I'm Ibrahim Nehme. I'm calling from Lebanon. I'm actually at the very moment in the north in a like in the countryside. And I think I arrived here because of a magazine I started 8 years ago called the Outpost, which was initially an attempt to somehow capture the energies of a very transformative wave that was sweeping through the Arab region at the time, which we called the Arab Spring. And it was really an attempt to produce a different narrative about this part of the world and from this part of the world. And it was very much an experiment, or at least that's how it began, or that's how it seems all of my projects begin, as experiments. But then 8 years later, I find myself in a space where I'm actually dabbling with multiple forms of media, be it radio or print or online or events or live performances, as a way to explore new ways to tell a different story about who we are as a people, where we have come from, and our possibilities like for the future. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Beautiful, thank you. Thanks, Rahim. So I want to start off, obviously 2020 has been a, I think we've lost sense of what word to describe 2020. Let's say an exemplary year in crises. So we've gotten acquainted with many forms of crises on personal, national, regional, global levels. And I'm curious to know from each of you, what was kind of your toughest challenge, your personal toughest challenge this year? And maybe a little bit also about how that personal experience related to the collective experience that's been going on.
I mean, for me, like I look back at the lockdown or at the first 6 months of the year or 7 months, and I don't see it as a challenge as much as an opportunity to actually slow down. And I was really basking in the glory of it. Like I really enjoyed it so much, and I learned so much, and I changed my habits in a way that had a positive impact on my well-being, you know. Even gave me the space to reflect on my work, and I think that perspective that came with it really helped refine some of it. But I think obviously the biggest challenge for me was August 4 and the fact that I took a big hit in my left foot, and I'm still like recovering from it, which was and still is such a traumatic experience to grapple with. But to tie this into the kind of work I do, I think like I mean, for me personally, my relationship with the city has completely changed. My relationship with Lebanon has completely changed. And I think this place has housed me for the past, has housed my projects for all those years that I've been producing and doing work here. And I think this will naturally have an impact on the kind of work I will be doing moving on as I, find my footing again and start walking. So I think that for sure has been the biggest challenge, and I probably can't speak of it with so much clarity because I'm still processing so much of it.
Right.
I think when I hear Ibrahim's challenge on an individual level, I hear you, Ibrahim, and I think I have a similar challenge. I was thinking that I was all an office person. I really love physical connections with my coworkers, with my community, with the people who comes to the events that I design. When everything has started in March, actually in Turkey, we canceled all the events, all the physical events, and we decided to stay at home and working from home. And I think it was the first time that I even turned on my laptop at home, because I was using another laptop for my personal stuff, for like watching Netflix and everything. So it was the first time that I opened the screen and turned on my laptop. And also in June, I actually moved my apartment. I moved to another area in Istanbul. And it was actually a decision that also have a similar experience with Ibrahim's level, individual challenge, because my personal connection with the city, with Istanbul, has been changed. Because I'm more at home, I need more air. I have to go to the parks and the shore. I need to see the sea every day. So I changed my location, and like so many people in my circle has asked, are you crazy? We are in the middle of a crisis. There is a COVID-19. There is an economical crisis. Are you sure that you want to change your whole habits and whole location? And I said yes, because it's also good for my well-being. I feel much more better in this house and also in this area. That's why it was also a bit with changing connections during this time.
There's like this reprioritizing, right?
Yeah.
That's been happening. Joan, does that?
Yeah, I kind of sense this resonates with everyone so far, and I guess it's not so much about the confinement really as it is as adapting to all these changes constantly. You know, it's not like you know, we used to be able to plan at least a month ahead anything, and I just feel like this entire year has been us opening up to constant shifts, to constant breaking of norms or something that's supposed to be like that, and we're just constantly readapting, reshifting, and this takes a lot at the beginning. It takes so much toll on you because it drowns you. You're used to sort of be able to organize a bit ahead, and then when these things start collapsing, they take a toll on you. And then I think a year later, I mean almost a year later, like just yesterday, they announced a total confinement in France, a place where I'm living now, and it suddenly feels like, okay, I can deal with this. Like, bring it on. I mean, it just kind of okay, we'll reshift again. I mean, it just felt so normal now to keep on reshifting according to how the world is taking you. And yeah, I guess if there's one thing that came out of this is our ability to accept.
Yeah, I mean, that's brilliant. I know, Joan, you had mentioned to me earlier that you had also gone through a shift in the project that you were working on with Beirut Animated, where there was this physical, very heavy programming in the physical space. And then, of course, actually, it was probably before COVID, but you can tell us more about how that shift was for you from the physical to the digital, because I think there's an interesting link there that we're seeing of this feeling of feeling really far away from the world, but then feeling super connected to the world at the same time. Like, this wouldn't be happening. All of us wouldn't be sitting in a room together because we wouldn't be flying to the same place to record this, right? So there is this positive side of being connected to people that you wouldn't normally be connected to. And I wonder what your experience
with a lesser carbon footprint, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because if we want to take Lebanon as an experiment with 2020, we have a lot of disruptions that created these shifts. And before Corona, the first, I'm going to call it disruption for lack of a better word, was even if it was a positive one at the beginning, was the October Revolution that took place in early end of 2019, and at that time was when Beirut Animated was scheduled. Like, literally, Beirut Animated was going to be scheduled a week after the revolution began. We've been working on it for a year and a half. So basically, just a little recap before I talk about the festival. So this festival was born from Metropolis Association. It's a cinema association in Beirut in 2009. So they started it as part of their ongoing festivals because they felt there was a need to include animation and film. And it ran for biannually, so a year. And it ran for, I guess, 4 editions up until 2013, before the Arab Spring that kind of complicated things as well, and it kind of skipped two editions. And in 2018, I met with Fadi Bai, who is a colleague. He's a film director and also an animator. And we were discussing how needed, I mean, there's a gap for this place that connects animation lovers together. And Beirut Animated was the only festival in the Arab world that kind of bridged animation in the entire Arab world, and was really a meeting point that a lot of people were looking forward to. So we felt like we needed to kind of revive this, and we really felt the need to have this place back. So we suggested that we become the directors for this edition and kind of pick it up from there. So we worked on it for a year and a half, planning a revival, like an amazing revival, whereabout we include not just, of course, international speakers from, like, we had an animator coming from Brazil to do a stop motion workshop, and other filmmakers from France and Switzerland and Europe. But we also had a lot of people doing things in the Arab world that were also going to be there and participating. We created a huge hype digitally for an entire year by reviving all the social media channels that weren't there in 2013. So it was kind of an opportunity for us to mark whatever was going to happen, but online, and create a hype for it. And this really proved to be an amazing thing already, because just by creating these channels and kind of getting people excited about it, was already a way for us to connect with people that we didn't know about, with talents that were just there, with films that we didn't even hear of. Then we started even asking people to create animated bumpers for the festival. So up until the festival, and we were receiving tons and tons of these bumpers that we were throwing out every couple of days. So a lot of people got excited, even wanting to actually buy tickets in advance and come there. And right before, the day I was going to print the catalog, the October Revolution started. At first, we were a bit we were skeptical, I have to say, like a lot of people, and at the beginning. Of course, we felt the force of the revolution. We felt it. We felt like it was something different, but something inside of us felt like, okay, perhaps if we wait a couple of days, this just might move to something else, disappear. But then 3 days later, we were part of this, and by no way, by no means can you bring us back to our houses or studios, actually continuing life as it was before. I mean, we couldn't even imagine life as it was before. So we felt like it was a very good decision to just say that this was going to be postponed to further notice. Of course, further notice meant COVID-19, and needless to say, it was also repostponed a couple of times later until now. I mean, we have no. We haven't been able to screen. A year later, we still haven't been able to do the program or screen any of the films, with opportunities that come every week, but again keep on changing. So yeah,
it's interesting to hear you. The way your experience went was there was this shift in, you've been focused on something for a whole year, then, life happens, change happens, and then you want to be part of that change. So you also shift directions in what you're working on. And you said you got, really involved in the revolution, and then that kind of has this domino effect. And then you find yourself in a place today, right, where you are involved in other projects. You're still, figuring out how to launch this. But I'm curious, because we haven't heard from Ibrahim about in a few minutes. I'm curious, Ibrahim, Does what Joan is talking about resonate with you in terms of this? I know you've been working on projects that have come out as a result or as inspired by what you've been experiencing this year. So could you tell us a little bit more about that and what your experience has been with bringing people together around crisis?
I mean, obviously, like, the one thing that comes to mind now when you say about, like, when you say my experience about bringing together people, we were organizing a workshop that takes place in Beirut and Marseille and Berlin for a group of journalists that had to be, I mean, we did the first iteration in Berlin in December, and then we were planning to come to Beirut, and then all this craziness started to happen, and things, we couldn't even move the workshop online, you know, because it just had a different, it had a different, like, the experience had a very specific texture that couldn't be captured in like over Zoom or by convening online. And I feel that this simple story kind of also resembles a lot of my work, in the sense that I realized, I mean, I'm working on a live performance, and I've been also like trying to tap into those physical spaces where people can come together to experience something on a collective level, you know? It's like being on a dance floor. And I feel, and in many ways, I compare the work that I do to clubs, because it's in many ways similar in the way that it taps into underground culture and creates safe spaces for people to convene and to experience something together. And this, for me, has been completely lost. And no, it cannot be reproduced or recaptured in an online experience. Like, there's no way. So I found myself just like waiting. But I mean, I don't say this with like pessimism or like, you know, I think now, looking back at the year and the space that just opened up out of nothing for me to have this tremendous amount of time to reflect on the kind of work I do and fine tune my methodologies and just refine the offering, has been incredible, you know? So, but back, I mean, so I don't know how I can answer your question within, like, because you asked a very specific question about the crisis, and I'm not being able to, because always my work seems to be a response to a crisis as much as, like, not necessarily, like, I don't know if I'm making sense, but like.
But Ibrahim, I really love how you always kind of, whatever disruption that took place, that happened, it always comes out as a positive opportunity for you, as a space to reflect on and re-choose your offering. And that's something that you kind of tend to say over and over again. And it's interesting how you always, as a person, because I know you, tend to always see these crises as positive changes for you, and just creating new spaces to reflect.
And yeah, and I mean, they are, like, we talked about this like in our prep meeting the other day. Like, I really feel like everyone keeps on talking about the negative impact of this, like the economic and like the you know, like it seems to be, there seems to be this you know, collective feeling that we're going through such doom and gloom that there's no prospect of any hope for our future. But I see like this is very much challenging systems that we have been trying to shake for such a long time, and here comes a virus that was able to do so single-handedly in a span of 7 months, and has left us completely in shambles. But I feel like just like the impact that this has had on our well-being and the way we like connect with each other and the way we do business, like the fact that multinational companies are asking their employees to stay at home, and even like some of them are going to the extent that they're turning their offices into co-working spaces, and like going to an office is no longer mandatory. And we're talking this kind of thing is coming from like ginormous multinational companies that for me are the epitome of the capitalistic system that we're trying to resist.
Dismantle.
So if these companies are coming and they're basically allowing their employees to care for their well-being by not going to the office and experience the stress of going to the office every day, by being at the office or just like going to the office, I feel this is, like I mentioned it last time, like it almost feels to me like a spiritual awakening on a collective level. So yeah.
I think the
really interesting perspective. Yeah. Go ahead, Emre.
Sorry, Leen. I think the
go ahead.
crisis itself is like a mother bringing so many different children to the world. Some of the children are some of the possibilities or opportunities that we can see for our future. Because not just this negative effect of the crisis itself is also a thing that we have to discuss. Also the things that we care because of the crisis, that things that we have to change because of the crisis, like the climate change, the racism, like the economical difference of the people. So these kind of things are much more visible with the crisis itself. Therefore, I see the crisis as an opportunity to shake the people all around the world and to show them what is needed, what has to be changed immediately, how we have to come together as a collective, as a community all around the world, and how this thing is an essential for all of us.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I want to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about specifically the creative industry and our our work revolves around creative collectives and communities coming together, and this idea of collaboration and co-creation to solve some of these issues, right? So we're talking about the individual shift, but the way I think about it too is the individual eventually becomes the collective, right? And we come together. How do we co-create the future that we are all discussing here today? Like, what is the role of creatives in all of this?
Yeah, I can maybe talk about two different projects on this side. There is a collective and there is a community called Design Calendar. It's a global community for creatives all around the world. It has started last year as a design calendar for events all around the world to just to show and inspire people. But this year, with the help of the COVID-19, it actually turned out as a creative community, and they started as an action called No Jobs Board during the pandemic. Helping creatives find meaningful work, at the same time helping companies find the right creative talent. Because it has started during the pandemic, it was actually, the need was actually helping the creative freelancers, the creative talent, obviously couldn't find jobs because of the pandemic and its economical effects. So I think it was a really great effort during this time to see how these creative people come together and find an answer together with their collective mindset. I think this is the first example that I can share with the creative industries and the creative freelancers. And the second example comes from my experience, from my practice. Istanbul Development Agency has announced an open call during the pandemic to help the companies and the individuals suffering from the social, economical, and obviously the health level of the pandemic. And we created a project called COVID in Residence, which was helping the creative freelancers to find their co-workers and to connect with their co-workers on a different level. So we did an open call, we select six teams coming from different backgrounds, from different disciplines, and they applied with different projects to this program. And they got coaching, mentoring, creative entrepreneurship training, a great financial support for their projects. And at the end of 3 months, we organized a demo day, like a showcase event, to meet with the other participants in the ecosystem. So these creative freelancers can show their projects to the public and to the other levels in the ecosystem. So this actually helped a lot. We reached out more than 100 creative freelancers in the ecosystem on a different level. What we get from the Istanbul Development Agency as a funding, we just give them to the freelancers. So it was actually a great project in our like practice, because we help to the creative freelancers what we care in our daily life, actually.
And it shows a true belief in the idea that the future is in the creative workforce, and that's who, you know, that's
the future is in the creative workforce, and obviously the creative workforce is not similar with the other entities or other disciplines, because it's much more flex. It's much more individual and freelance level. Therefore, we have to support them in different levels.
Joan, how have you seen, or have you seen this kind of support for, I know you run your own studio. Has this shown up in your year running a studio, running a creative business, being an independent creative? You know, has this been an issue, getting funds, external funds to support? I feel that there's, you know, on the one side, there's the efforts of like what Emre just mentioned, but on the other side, there's this lack and there's this need for it.
Yeah. Yeah, in Lebanon, I mean, of course, there's much less or none government-led fundings, and most are private-based or institution like embassies. So one support we got was from the Fund Tasmim. Actually, it's led by the Goethe Institute in Germany, and they decided to do something really just for the design scene. And that's really rare, because the kind of funding we get in Lebanon is mostly either for the arts, performing arts, visual arts, but almost never for the design scene, which would include graphic designers, illustrators, even product designers, and like fashion designers. And so yes, that's one support I was able to get for my design studio, and I was able to invest in a Riso printer, which could now allow me to have in-house publications, so micro edition publications, and be able to benefit the entire design scene. But otherwise, the support we got was really after the 4th of August, after the explosion, where we got institutions raise funds for designers whose studios were damaged near the explosion. My studio was completely damaged. It was right in front of the explosion. So we were able to get a bit of support for that, and we're quite really, I mean, very, very grateful for such private-led institutions. But yeah.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
That's really good to hear. I didn't expect
at least
that.
you have that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like when I think about what we as creatives can kind of bring to the table in these global efforts, there is something that we're realizing, which is that there's this, it seems new, but it's not new, this trend of, you know, remote work, remote collaboration, like the hackathons that Emre has been leading, where you bring, you know, thousands of people from all around the world to solve very specific crises. I feel that creatives have been kind of doing this for a long time, have built up some of these skills and tools that are needed to be able to solve these types of challenges on such a broad scale. And I'm wondering, like, in your opinion, what can the rest of the world learn from creatives and from the creative industry? Like, what could we bring to the table more of?
I don't know, I'm a person, again, I don't believe that creatives have a role and the business mind and the business people have a role. I think just individuals have a role in everything, and they find their place in a very organic way, and without really taking on the role of the hero or the savior or the person that's going to, I mean, it's just how you decide to cope with things when they do happen, and when you cope, how it influences others. I tend to feel like taking any action that's heroic or like, oh, we're going to be saving the day is always, I tend to see just like, let the shift happen, cope with the shift. If you can cope with it by influencing positively the others around you, then you did a good thing, whether you're a creative person or not. And
Best to add to that, I feel also, to answer your question a bit like from a different angle, I feel creative people and artists in general, basically, they're the producers of culture. And I feel that when it comes to like those moments of shifts, it's the culture that actually makes the leap, not the law, not the politics, not the economy. It's I think first it's like the ideas infect, and then the laws change. Like, first of all, the moods of like the mood of the collective had to change about, let's say, LGBT and like gay marriage before the laws eventually shifted, and culture did that. And for these kinds of monumental changes, I think artists have a role in basically putting in new visions of how we could be, or what we could be, or how we could be together, or how we could live, or how our future could look like. Because it's very much a game of the imagination. And I think artists play this game. And by doing so, they produce the culture that ends up becoming the world that we inhabit.
So imagining it and creating it, or creating the possibility of it, then leads to the actual implementation of it somehow.
Yeah. Because ideas really do shift minds and change behavior along the lines. And I think this is instrumental for eventually the politics to make the shift.
It's funny because it reminds me of what during the revolution, a lot of artists and organizers, they started creating cluster groups in order to say, okay, how do we respond to the revolution? Do we create more direct actions? Or so there are a lot of art institutions and artists started sitting together to think of policies that and suggest, if one day we have a government that is semi-functional, like what cultural policies can we today dream of? Even if they would take years and years to actually be put in place, can we actually write them down and come up with a document that shows what cultural policies could be executed one day in a government like Lebanon? So I guess, yes, you're right, Ibrahim. But you probably won't gain a direct action that's visible, but talking and regrouping and clustering, like the hackathons that Emre is also organizing, already does open up. It's like the panel that we're having now. A lot of ideas are just things that kind of start boiling in, and then things that we don't really think about when we're alone, but when we voice them out, they start making sense.
I think the future, also the future of the creatives, but not just the creative, the future of everyone is on a micro communities level. Like the communities that we belong will also define how we behave, how we work, how we learn, and how we play as well. That's why I think as the creatives, we love to be in heterogenic areas. We don't like homogenic like areas with all the like-minded people. I really like to be with people who can challenge me, who just doesn't think like me, like who brings another different approach or idea to the table. that's why I think I really like to be sometimes in a very, let's say, not a solid area, so I can feel much more disconnected or much more unsecure, so I can challenge myself as well.
This has been a really, really amazing conversation, and I love the jump between, you know, people popping in and saying, oh, this might be pessimistic or this might be optimistic. It feels like there's this tension between, okay, you know, can a crisis be positive? Does it have to be negative? And vice versa, like, is it okay to view certain aspects of it as negative? But one thing I've heard, you know, this whole conversation is that there is a lot of hope and a lot of opportunity that lies in difficult situations and difficult disruptions, as you've been calling them so eloquently, Joan. Where in that disruption there's a space, and that space needs to be occupied by the right people, by the right collaborations, by the right cross collaborations too. So, you know, not just people from the creative industry, but people working across industries to come together to kind of really envision this brighter future. And so I guess what we can end with is, I'd be curious to know, you know, what do you hope for yourself? What do you know, talking about the individual level, what is a hope that you have for yourself to contribute to this, you know, movement or this change that we're talking about today? You know, what's one small thing maybe that you want to be doing so that in the long run we have this gradual shift towards what we're all looking for?
I would say from my end, dream, stay small scale. I mean, we always say dream big. I say dream small. Dream tiny, you know, tiny baby steps that you can do on your own, and that you see that you can finish, and then small and small and small will be big. And I guess that's what I'm able to do right now, because of everything that's happening around. I'm able to just put small, tiny objectives that I'm able to see, and projects that I can probably end up doing alone, or maybe with one or two other people. Maybe, yeah, that's how I see this.
Dream small, I like that.
Yeah.
I think from my side, the motto, the one thing will be believe in the connections. Believe in the connections that you have for the past, and believe in the connections that you can bring, and believe in the connections that might like happen in the future. So these connections might be like a small or tiny, like Joan said, efforts, but it can get big with the others' help. That's why I believing in the connections that I crafted in the past 10-15 years can be also new connections of my community, of my people in the future.
I also like, I'm thinking along the lines of like those small steps, even though I say this knowing that I have somehow in the very back of my mind a 10-year plan or a 15-year plan. But I kind of realized over the past year that it's actually those small steps that eventually help you make the leap. And initially it started by doing, and this answers the first question that you asked me, which I forgot to answer, about the little habits I picked up. So I started by doing like 5 minutes or 10 minutes yoga every day during the quarantine. And then after my foot injury, I just like started waking up and like having 5 minutes of silence, and then maybe 5 minutes of exercising my leg just to gain some more muscle. And I realized that those 5 or 10 minutes that I spend just by myself, just like giving myself care and caring for my foot, actually has like tremendous impact on my well-being throughout the day. So it's not just those 5 minutes or those, you know, few minutes that we spend in silence, or spend just like doing something that makes us feel better or feel good, or just present, you know. So I feel those actually end up having a leap. So yeah, I agree with you guys.
One thing I'm taking away today that has been a recurring theme is that, you know, what we're talking about today is, you know, collective responses, community responses, global crises, like these very, you know, big words and large scale concepts. But it feels like what we keep coming back to is that in order for those to be really powerful, you have to start with yourself. And you know, it's something that we all kind of know, but it's been a really nice reminder today that if you don't start with those small steps on an individual level, then we can't even start talking about the collective and the global, and we can't start, you know, making real change. So that's kind of what I'm taking away from this conversation today. So I thank you for that. I think I needed that reminder. And I thank you all for your time. I'm sure we could have gone on for hours chatting about this. But it's been really nice to just hear your different perspectives. And so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Leen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Leen.
Yeah.